I'm glad to introduce to our audience Steve Wells, one of the most popular guy who brought tapping into corporate business, and friend of Brett Yates. Hello, Steve.
Hi, Pavel.
Can you explain and tell us how did you get into tapping and why tapping?
I learned tapping from Gary Craig, and I learned it in 1997, which is a long time ago now. And he had made these videotapes. That's how long ago it was. We don't even have videotapes now. And a friend of mine who was a very conservative psychologist had come back from America with these videotapes, and so he told me about this. And maybe I never would have looked at it because it seemed a little bit ridiculous. But because of who he was, I watched the videotapes. I was fascinated because I was actually working with war veterans at the time, and I saw Gary Craig working with war veterans, and he had fantastic results. And I decided to try it out on my wife. So she had a needle fear, a fear of having needles, and so I was still learning it from the manual and from watching the videotapes, but instantly, just from a few minutes of doing this tapping, she relaxed and felt better. And the next day, she was able to go and have her needle without any fear, and even watch. She'd never been able to do this. And so that was interesting. And then a few days later, I used this with a client.
How much time it took to switch from needle fear to having no fear?
We did it for like 5 minutes. Okay, now a lot of things take a lot longer, but some things are very quick. And she wouldn't even. What happened was, I said, we measured, and it was about 5 out of 10 when she thought about it, how bad she felt. And then after one round of tapping with EFT, it went to 2 out of 10. And I could see she was more relaxed. And I said, let's get it to a 0. And she said, you're not getting me to do that silly looking thing again. But then she went and had the blood test and felt differently. So that was different. And she became a believer after that. And then I had a client a few days later I tried this with, who had a very traumatic experience. Her son was threatening to kill her, and she was shaking from this memory. And again, it was just a few minutes of tapping, and she tapped on one of these points on the finger. We were using the original long version of EFT, and she tapped on this point here, and it was like, whew, the problem just went away. And she said, boy, that one worked, didn't it? I said, yeah.
Are you what is your education? Was your psychology?
Okay. So the reason why I was working with this lady doing psychotherapy, and the reason why I was already trained as a psychologist, and I was working as a psychologist, and I had a private practice seeing clients, and I also did some work in corporations. So I also had developed a corporate training side to my business, and I started to work with a range of people. Anyway, so this client had a fantastic result. Her life changed completely. Then I decided to make contact with Gary Craig. We invited him to Australia, but he wouldn't come, so we had to go to America to study with him. And my good friend, Dr. David Lake, I showed him the technique, and we went over to meet Gary Craig. And David had his public speaking phobia cured by Gary in San Francisco in that workshop, and that was in February 1998. And since then, we started teaching it and incorporating it in our programs. My friend started teaching and presenting with me because he didn't have his fear anymore, and it was fantastic. And then over the years, we have developed our own techniques, simpler way of using the tapping, and so on and so on.
Do you have interesting stories how corporate business changed with tapping? Like you come, give them tapping, and what changes? Like some fascinating stories about that.
Okay, so this is one thing that I have done. Because I was already doing some work in the corporate area, I started to incorporate the tapping. I was also working with sports people, elite sports people, and I incorporated the tapping into this and helped sports people to perform at their peak.
How do you think, how many people in sport, in professional sport, use tapping? Do they hide it, like because it's the advantage?
Some hide it and some don't. You can go online, you can find some examples of people using it. Some have been willing to talk about it, but some just do it secretly. That's fine. You know, it's a fantastic technique for getting over blocks to performance.
And in what sports usually you use it? Like what?
Well, at the time I was working with our professional baseball team, and so I used it with one. For example, I used it with a baseball pitcher, and he became the best. He was the best pitcher for the year in the entire league, because he got over all of his blocks. Certain batters, they came out and he wasn't intimidated anymore, and he could just perform at his peak. And so he got the most valuable player for the team, the most valuable. He won the Pitcher of the Year award for the league. He went on to play professional baseball in the US, and it's fantastic. But I've used it in probably about, I should count, maybe 15 to 20 sports with different sports people, and I've used it with a range.
Can you name the sports, like baseball?
Yeah, so baseball, basketball. We have a thing called netball, which is I don't know if they play netball in Russia. It's like basketball without a backboard. They just have the ring, and they don't bounce the ball; they just pass it. So I worked with a woman who went on and helped the Australian team to win a gold medal in the Commonwealth Games in netball. Swimming, golf. Golf is, and this is, some corporate people are interested in golf as well. So golf is a sport that a little bit of difference in tension makes a big difference in performance.
Do you think Tiger Woods uses tapping?
I think if he did, his comeback might have been sooner. Because, of course, when you have issues in your life, it can get into your performance. And again, this applies in sport as well as business. I like to work in the area of peak performance, whether it is in business, whether it is in sport, whether it's in any kind of performance. But yeah, I've used.
And how do you put this tapping? How do you explain people why they should tap in corporate business? How do you bring it?
Okay, so the thing about the answer is it depends. It depends on the group. It depends on the person. So I have used tapping with business owners. For many years, I worked in what's called the Center for Entrepreneurship, for people who are entrepreneurs who run their own businesses. At the Curtin University in the business school, I was presenting to business owners, groups of business owners every year, several times every year. I've presented it. I've used it in coaching with CEOs and CFOs and COOs and general managers and leaders and owners. I've used it within corporations as part of learning and development. So, but usually I present it within a framework and as a technique that you can use for peak performance, for overcoming blocks, to building your business, achieving your goals, for relieving stress, for improving communication. Because when you communicate with someone, If you're feeling, if for example, if you're a manager and you are angry at someone who's not performing, and you don't do something to change that feeling, then all that comes across is the feeling of anger, not the message. And so I teach it to people as a self-management tool, as a way of being able to get over your own blocks and barriers, but also to change the way you feel, because feeling is everything. There's a lady named, oh my gosh, I can't remember her name, but she, it'll come to me. She says they'll forget what you say, they'll forget what you do, but they'll never forget how you make them feel. And so when you're in business, it's all about the feeling that your customers have. It's all about doing business with you. It's all about the feeling that your employees have about working for you. And if you're not aware of the influence on people's feelings, then you're not aware of the most important thing in business. Because if I don't feel good about doing business with you, I'm not going to do business with you. If you're so stressed out that you are yelling at me all the time because I'm working for you, I don't want to work for you. You know, so
and how does this thing changes relationships between people in corporations? Do you have stories with some details, facts? Like, for instance,
Sure.
you have a very big training for Alcoa company where you taught about 800 people.
Oh yeah, okay.
So what's happening there?
Well, that was actually a program that was organised through the occupational health and safety area. It was really a program run across the organisation to train the staff in strategies for managing stress and anxiety. And so I incorporate tapping as one of the tools for helping people to manage their stress and anxiety. And yeah, we did that in groups of 20 or 30 or 40 at a time. And we did I did a presentation. I gave them a demonstration. I taught them the tapping. I gave them a number of tools, and tapping was one of the tools.
What changes?
Well, a lot of them actually, a lot of them got better on their mental health problems. And a lot of people actually started accessing help. In fact, the medical center, you know, because this is a mining type company, men particularly are not very good at getting help. And so a lot of them actually started to access that help. And we had examples of people using it to give up smoking. We had examples of people using it to improve their performance. We had examples of people using it. Probably better example is another group that I used it with, where they had improvements across the board in all of their performance measures after doing this program. Whereas the Alcoa one was really just it was more a corporate mental health program, you could say. But you know, I ran a program for vehicle examiners in a government department. These are the ones when you have a car, if your car has to be roadworthy, and these people examine your car and see if it's roadworthy or not. And usually the people in this country who have to take their car to get it checked are the type of people that don't really want to be there. And so they get very angry at the examiners, and they have trouble with their communication and so on. So we incorporated tapping into this program. And
you mean you taught tapping for guys who examine cars?
Yeah, guys, and mostly they are guys and girls, but you know, most of them were men. And it was part of a program to help them to improve their customer satisfaction rating. Okay. Now, the customer satisfaction rating when we started was 8%. Okay, do you understand 8%? That's a very low rating. Virtually nobody was satisfied. Okay. And then after the program, it had gone up to 52%. Okay.
How did you measure this satisfaction?
Well, this is the corporation, the organisation measures this all the time as part of their own program. So generally, if you have an organisation that already uses a performance measure, then you can come in and you can say, okay, let's use this as a measure of the effectiveness of the program. If you don't do that, then how do you know it's worked? You know?
Yes, of course. And do they measure satisfaction between the people in the organization, or do they ask customers? How do they measure? What do they measure?
Some people measure. Well, generally they will give the customers a rating. So some of them do it randomly, some of them do it every time. It really depends. And not every organisation that I've been involved with uses this as a measure of the effectiveness of the program, but this was one example that they did. You know, I can give you another example, which is probably a bit more dramatic and impactful for someone running a business. We worked with an engineering company, and we worked with the senior managers, and it was part of a program to help them to learn to do presentations. So they had to do presentations in business. They also had to do presentations to their teams. They had to do presentations to win business. And so we worked, for example, with a chief operations officer, and so he's one of the top 3 managers of the company, and he had to go and do a presentation to try and win some business, and we got him over his public speaking fear with tapping, and he went on and won a $29 million contract.
Million?
Yeah, $29 million contract, and he says that he wouldn't have been able to get that contract if he hadn't got over his fear, because he was very anxious about doing presentations. So yes, public presentations is an area across the board. You can even have very senior managers who still have fear of presenting, and tapping is fantastic for overcoming that fear. I've used it with many CEOs, and you know, I even used it with a friend of mine who was working in a national corporation, and he was stepping up to a new level in the corporation, and he had to do presentations across the country. And so, of course, this brought up his presentation fear. And I just did a couple of sessions with my friend, and he was able to go. Now he loves doing presentations.
Oh, great. As I hear, you work with men a lot, and here in Russia, what I'm facing, that not many men uses this tapping, and they seem it silly more than women. So do you have some special tips how to explain for men this thing?
Well, men are more interested in performance. So the problem with EFT is it stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. When you use the word emotion, most men run for the hills. So because usually men have trouble with emotion. They experience emotions, but they don't know how to deal with them. So, and as a man, and just about everywhere in the world, I'm sure it's the same, you know, in your country, is that men are not meant to show emotion, even though it's changing, even though everybody says it's important for men to express their emotions. It's still very, very difficult, and men who do that, it doesn't always help them. So I get more men because I work in the area of peak performance, and men are interested in performance. They want to improve their results, and when they learn the technique, they also learn they can improve their relationships. They learn that they can improve things at home. They learn that they get less stressed in their life, and they improve their performance.
As I heard, as Alex said, that you usually explain tapping as a way how to change personal life of people in corporates. They use it, and that's how they feel better when they work. Is it true?
Yeah. The other thing is I present it to them in a framework, so it's not the only technique. I explain that there are cognitive mind techniques, change the way you think. There are body techniques, change the way you use your body. learn to breathe, learn to relax your body, learn to use posture for performance, to get yourself in a peak state, learn the skills of your business, develop your skills, and learn tapping. and because I presented in a framework, it's much easier for people to accept. And secondly, some people need to learn that there has been research, that it is legitimate, because it's a different technique. Their mind judges the technique and says this is crazy. Plus, we've developed a way of using the technique that makes it more acceptable to more people than the original EFT. Because in the original EFT, you have to use self-acceptance, set-up statements, and many people find this very difficult to do. We just simply teach the tapping and tapping on the acupressure points. Plus, if I work with someone who is very, very much in their head, there's something about tapping on the face which seems very difficult for them to do, and it feels a little ridiculous. So we teach them to tap on the finger points on the hand, and we teach them to do this using the thumb of the same hand to tap on these points, just like I'm doing here. And this is very unobtrusive. So I can be sitting here talking to you, and I could be tapping on these points. I could be sitting in the boardroom about to do a presentation, and I'm tapping on the finger points under the table, and I'm calming myself down, and I'm settling my body and all of those things. But it's not obtrusive. It doesn't get in the way, and it doesn't feel ridiculous.
And when you do coaching with CEOs, with top managers, with owners of business, what issues do they have, and how do you change it? How do you resolve them?
Okay, so usually with those kind of leaders, it's more working one-on-one, doing leadership coaching. And so within the coaching relationship, there's a privacy and there's a connection, and we can talk openly. But also because I am a business owner, I understand some of the issues in business, and I've worked at many different levels in lots of different businesses. But all business owners and even CEOs, they have to worry about the money. They have to worry about the direction of the company, whether their strategic direction is actually going to take them where they want to go. And then apart from the money and finances and cash flow, which is an issue for everyone in business, then the issue is the people and the issues with people and people's performance, and whether and dealing with people who aren't performing. But it can also be personally in yourself. If you're an owner, you can get stressed out. You can get overwhelmed. You can get to the point where too many things are worrying you and keeping you asleep at night. And so the tapping is fantastic for this. I worked with the managing partner, the Australian managing partner of a global legal company. And this man had actually, he was working for another firm, and then he split from this firm, and he took the people who believed with his values, and him and another person, they worked together to build this new firm. But then the partner, the business partner who was working with him, suddenly said, I'm gone, I'm out, I'm not doing this anymore. And this man, it really affected him because they've been working very, very hard. They just got to the point where he's just starting to see that there's the light at the end of the tunnel, and then crash. So he called me, and I came in, and he had his head in his hands, and he looked like he was half dead. And I hadn't taught him tapping at this point, but I said, today's your lucky day. I'm going to teach you this tapping. And he found it incredible. In fact, he's been one of the greatest advocates of tapping. He taught it to hundreds of lawyers. He's passed it on to other people. He's a lawyer, so a big legal firm of lawyers. Yeah. So he was the managing partner, the one in charge of the organization for Australia, for a global company. And yeah, he says tapping saved my life, he says. And it did, because when I used it with him, I could see him coming back to life when the stress started to leave his body. And then he was able to regain his faith that the direction that he was taking the company in was still a good direction, even though this other man had gone. It was the right way to go.
Did he achieve his goal? Did he get to this light in his tunnel?
The company grew massively, and over the next few years. But he is now working for himself. He's left the legal area. He does consulting like I do with other companies now, and we meet occasionally and talk. But he still uses tapping.
Yes, and in what area CEOs and owners of business ask you for this thing? Like in what areas of companies?
Okay, so companies don't normally ask for tapping. They ask for help with performance. They ask for help with sales. They ask for help with reducing the amount of people taking leave with stress, improving the communication. And because I have skills in these other areas, usually I can come in and I can also do a communication program, and I can incorporate tapping as a tool that works together with that program. Or I can do a program to improve performance, and we can incorporate the tapping as part of that program. But yeah, the common issues in all business is cash flow and finances, and dealing with people issues and performance issues. And of course, so I've run programs on my big thing is what I call sustainable peak performance, which means peak performance that lasts, not just when you get to the top of the tree, but then you collapse because you're exhausted. This is where you're able to manage your energy so that you can continue to perform, because many people in business, the business takes away their life. They lose their focus, they lose their balance, they lose the capacity to have a life. One woman I worked with, she was a global leader in the government. She was a global director, and she said, "I don't have time to breathe." And I said, "Well, that sucks, because if you don't have time to breathe, you're dead, I said, "You don't have a problem that you don't have time to breathe. You have a problem that you've forgotten your priorities." Because breathing is like number one, No, number one is meaning, actually.
Meaning? What is
meaning? Having a meaning, having something meaningful to do. See, there's a gentleman named Viktor Frankl. He wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. By the way, it applies to women who also search for meaning as well. But back when he did that, he was a survivor of the Holocaust, and he found even in the
Yes, I read the book.
Well, yeah, so you would know that even in the worst situations, people have to find a meaning to live.
What about government? Do you work with government structures?
I try not to do that so much now, but I have many, many times.
Why you don't like to work with them?
Well, it's okay. Some people in the government, when they work for the government, they do that because they want security, and therefore they don't want the job to change. But in order for any organization to succeed, you need to change, you need to adapt. And so, in this country, in a lot of government departments, it's harder work to get some people to change than it is in a business where people are all volunteering to go because they have a vision to go somewhere, Yes. So the same principles apply. You need a vision that's a meaningful vision to succeed, and you need to get people to agree with that vision and the mission, and to have their values, fit with where the organization is going.
In my life, tapping is a helpful tool to change my state of mind, to find the decision, find the way when I don't actually have any decision and nobody can give me good advice. And I think this is the same with CEOs and owners of business, when they just don't have such a man who can give them good advice. And how does tapping help with it?
Well, a lot of CEOs and business owners are very lonely because they have to do it all. They have to hold it all together. If you don't manage yourself as a leader, and you come in, as Jim Rohn says, if you're in the middle of the battle and you walk into the general's tent and the general is sobbing, then you have a problem. If the general is crying in the middle of the tent, in the middle of the battle, then you're going to get worried, aren't you?
Yes.
So it's very important that the general, the leader, if you want people to come with you, then you need to be able to be clear about where you're going, and you need to be excited about going there, not fearful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you have like one more area of business when you use tapping? Like, we would like to show that it's a whole range of businesses, from engineers to lawyers, government, whatever.
Sure.
Internet technologies too, because usually these IT companies have enough money to care about their people inside.
Actually, the biggest challenge that IT companies have often is emotional intelligence, in order for their employees to be able to relate to the customers, because often they are up here and the customer is here and they can't bridge that gap. So there's a communication gap, but there's also an emotional intelligence gap. And so, it's more important than ever for people in all organizations to develop emotional intelligence. There's a lot of evidence that emotional intelligence is more important than intellectual intelligence in terms of performance. So I have worked with, IT firms and IT departments on training them in emotional intelligence. And it's usually a combination, as I say, it's the communication and it's the emotional understanding. And always, for everybody, you're a person before you're an employee. You're a person before you're an IT professional. You're a person before you're the CEO. In fact, most people who end up as leaders start out as employees, and then they get, then they do a really good job as an employee and they get promoted. But they're really good as an employee. Now they have to learn how to be a leader. And so they have to learn additional skills to do that. I can think of some specific IT examples, but actually, let me give you one example, and then let me go to another type of problem. I actually worked with a manager who was a computer guy, but his wife had died. And I actually had to help him to get his son to go to school because the son stopped going to school. So we actually taught the tapping to his son, got the son to school, and then I sat down with the man because he was having trouble being able to do anything. And so I just got him to do the tapping like this. And he's not the kind of person who normally has ways to manage his feelings. But after doing this for half an hour with me, he said, I've talked about this with 100 people, but I have never felt what I'm feeling right now. And so he was able to feel his feelings. He was able to allow his feelings to be there without getting overwhelmed by them. And he was able to deal with the emotion of the situation so that he could get himself back on deck, because he needed to be back on deck to look after his kids and to be able to go to work and perform. So this was, this was more in the realm of counseling than coaching, but you can't separate your life from your work. That's old fashioned, It's what they did in the dinosaurs times. Now, if you're going to be, a leader in business, you've actually got to realize that business is part of your life. It's not separate from your life. And if you have things going on in your life, you can't just go, okay, I'm just going to forget about all that. It comes out in your skin.
Yeah.
It comes out in your manner. It comes out in your attitude,
Yes. Do you have some examples? Like there was a overwhelmed atmosphere in the company, and the doing wasn't well, and then like they tapped, and it changed all the direction of the company and increased their income or something.
Yeah. Okay. So when I mentioned the vehicle examiners, we did a program for them to improve their customer performance. Did really well. A few years later, they were going through a big restructure. And so, of course, this happens all the time, is that the government changes, and so they restructure everything. And this caused a lot of stress to the employees, and all of these people were getting angry. They were having, communication problems with each other. It was really bad because there was a lot of resistance to the changes. So we actually come in, and because I had already taught them to do the tapping, we just did some sessions with every group, and we did some tapping, and we got them to tell us about all the things that were upsetting them.
How many people were there?
There would have been 4 groups of 30, I think. So they're probably about 100, 120 people overall. And each group we worked with, we did this tapping with them, and we just let them bring out their problems and do the tapping on this. And for example, one employee, he's like, I'm gonna kill that supervisor, but after he did the tapping, he's like, okay, I can see that he's just doing his job. And so he's like, so he was able to approach the supervisor and discuss the situation. But once again, the director of vehicle operations wrote to me and said, we were able to sail through that time that was very stressful because of the work that we did with the group there. Let me give you another example I've been wanting to talk about, because this is common in my country, and I think it's all over the world, and it's an issue of bullying. And this happens very often.
At schools even.
Well, it happens in schools, but it happens in business, and in business it's even worse because people, when they become professionals, they don't stop bullying. They just do it in a different language. They do it in a different way. They actually use their language to bully people or to put people down, but they can also do it with their manner. So, for example, I worked with a company, and a woman she got a promotional position to a general manager position, and there was another senior manager that was a man, and he wanted that position and he didn't get it. So he was very angry at her, and he didn't think that she deserved to have the position. So he would, in the meetings that she was running, he would be on his phone all the time. If she came into his office, he wouldn't look at her. He would look away. And she had a really hard time with this because, she was really being bullied, but it was a very subtle process. So I taught her the tapping, and I said, those reactions you're having, these are just primitive reactions from your nervous system to the way you're being treated. And she was able to do the tapping. She was able to overcome those feelings, and she was able to stand up to him and to say, I need you to be able to look at me when I'm talking to you, and I'm looking at you, and it's not respecting me to do this. And when we're in the anyway, and he pulled his finger out and started acting like a normal person and treating her with respect, because she was actually able to manage how it was triggering her and not be triggered so much, stand up to him. And when you stand up to a bully, they actually respond. So I've used this with many people, and I must say it's quite common for women in business to be bullied by men, in superior positions in this kind of way. I have several cases of this which I have worked with, and it's really empowering for someone to be able to not have that reaction anymore. To be able to, because some people can really deliberately target and affect people's energy. And it causes you to not be able to think straight. It causes you to not be able to perform very well. And then it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You know, the person is not respecting you because they don't think you can perform, and then you're not able to perform because you're so worried about your performance. See? Yeah. So so it's a really great thing to help people with, because the other thing is with this woman, and this is also common, when you step up to the next level, you can have a fear that maybe I'm not good enough to do this. And so we taught her the tapping. First, we got her over her reactions to the way she was being treated, and then we worked on her beliefs about her own capacity to be able to work at the top level. And she's very successful now. She's doing really well. And, you know, I mean, you know, I can give you a number of those similar kind of examples.
Seems like if somebody has such resistance, he will never go to the next level. This work should be done before he go to the next level.
Well, before, during, and after, actually, because because there's always another level. Because you know what? When you get to the next level, now there's another level. And if you really want to be the best, if you want to go to the top, then it's never ending. And I don't mean it's never ending, meaning like you can never feel successful. I just mean that there will be more challenges, and so, you know, and you know what? If you get there, and that's as far as, you know, as far as you go, and you stop, well, then your business will get taken over by someone else, you know.
And do you have one more example of like somebody who was moved in his career due to tapping, or doing business well, like growing company?
Okay. So I was working with a man. Him and his wife were running this business. They physiotherapists. Do you know what a physiotherapist is? It's like someone who's trained to be able to help you with your body, muscles, spine, help people with sports, but also help people to function, you know. And they're more like medical type professionals. They're not just like a massage person or someone like that. They're you know, they understand how the body works, and they understand what needs to be done to help people to improve. And so what actually happened was these people, they had several different centers of, you know, with people working for them in these different centers, but the wife was the driver of the company. However, they were going to have a baby. And so the wife needed to step back or step out of the company, and he needed to step up. And so because his wife had been, you know, she was a very driven person, he had really taken a back seat. And so it was a big thing for him to have to step into the spotlight, to be the leader.
This woman made all this company with different branches.
Yes, with her husband together. But she was really the driver. She was the one who drove the business to success. Yes. And she had to, of course, you know, put energy into, you know, this baby and so on. So, and he had stepped up into this role, but he just didn't feel confident. And so she actually sent him to me. I met them because they were working with the baseball team, and we were helping the baseball team. They were helping the baseball team with their sporting injuries, and I was helping with the performance, see? And so anyway, he came to see me, and essentially, first of all, I helped him like I always do. First of all, you learn the tapping, and you learn to use it to calm down your stress and anxiety and worries. And then once you get a little bit of freedom from that, now we can work on where you want to go. I got him to then start developing his vision of where he wanted to take the company. And I remember they actually set up another 4 or 5 centers after this. You know, they just grew and grew and grew the business. And his wife wrote to me. She said, "I've never seen him so focused." It was quite something.
How many times this company was grown up, like from this moment to
Well,
next?
I haven't actually seen them. That was many years ago, 12, 15 years ago that I worked with them. But I do know that that company is still around because I see branches, when I drive in various parts of the city. So they're still there and they're still in business. And so they've obviously endured. I should actually go and make contact and ask them, how they're going. They were very, very confident. And they were very, very happy with where they were going, and very, very happy having him be in charge and her able to take time out to focus on building the family, so that he could actually step up.
Steve, do you have some online courses helping people with their peak performance scene?
What I do at the moment is I also help people who are growing their own businesses. And so I have what I call a business breakthrough program, which is really for people who they're either running their own business, or sometimes it's only people who already have a business. Sometimes it's people who want to build their own business and they need to get themselves moving. So I quite often do coaching with people to get them started with their business, to build a business. And so I have a business breakthrough program, and we get people over their blocks to to creating the vision, to being able to put themselves out there, to be able to promote the business, to being able to do marketing. Because when someone's new in business, they have the skills, like example is the area of coaching. Many people want to set up a coaching business because they know how to coach, but that's not how you run a business. That's how you coach. The business is about getting people to coach, and what you charge them and how you manage your finances and all this stuff. And so, I often work with people like that because I love to help people to grow their business. I do. Sometimes I will run a boot camp for business people, and I do that online. So we do it over a series of days, or I do a coaching program over a series of months. And also I do, as you know, some one-on-one coaching with business owners and leaders.
How many companies did you start tapping or work with, like figure of companies, businessmen or people?
Sure. People, tens of thousands I've taught tapping, at various different ways, of course, because I run public seminars as well, personal development seminars. I also have done training for people who want to use tapping. We developed our own tapping approaches, which we train people who are, practitioners and people who are tapping coaches or energy practitioners or whatever. And also in businesses, like even in the Centre for Entrepreneurship, I would every year I would work with a couple of hundred business owners, and every one of them I would teach the tapping. And I'd have to count in terms of number of businesses. It would just be a guess. It would be in the hundreds.
Do you make coaching with translator? Like, can you do coaching if I will be a translator and you work with some Russian guy making his big business and want to make it bigger or something like that?
If they want to pay the money, of course. When you do coaching with a translator, and I've done many situations of coaching with translators over the years, of course there's the additional, they have to pay for the translator or, organize the translator. I like to work with translators like yourself, who I know already are good at this kind of thing, because if you don't have a good translator, it can make the process a lot more difficult,
How much is your coaching?
Well, the answer is it depends.
Depends on the issue, you mean?
Well, I have a different. If I'm going to work for a corporation, I'm going to work with and do leadership coaching. Then I'm not going to charge them, the same rate as I am for someone who's just starting out in their business, who is going to do a package program to you know, just to help to develop their business or get themselves going. So I charge what I consider is a very low rate for the people who are just developing their business, because it's, to me, it's an investment in them, you know. And whereas, you know, for someone in the company, the other thing is it depends what the issue is about and what the benefit is to the company. I can admit that I've been paid several $1,000s for a 1 hour to help a company for a particular problem that they know they're going to get a big benefit from. What's really helpful that I can offer people is that I have some programs which teach people how to do the tapping the way we do it. And just learning to do that can be very helpful.
And everybody go down below in the description of this video, go to the Alex Guerrero's website and read articles of Steve Wells on his website. Yes.
That's a lot of the work that I do. So I do work on getting clear on your own version of success, whatever that is, making sure that it aligns with your values, using the tapping to get over the blocks to going for it, and also using the tapping to iron out the parts of you that are pulling you in different directions so that you can be clear on where you're going. And so I run a regular coaching group with 100% Yes. I have people from all over the world that join me. Yeah, we'll offer another round of that every now and then. You know, usually we have a 6-month process for that. But I also have a program coming up on which is essentially on overcoming self-sabotage using my new intention tapping technique. And maybe we could get some people into that.
When I was trying to go to some work, I realized that everywhere in a structure there is a lot of running on stress, like stress motivation in companies. And is there any other possibility than to stress your people? They
overcome stress.
They use stress as an energy, and you can't just get rid of it because this is a motivation energy. Like your fuel is stress. Stress is the reason why you go to work and so on. So can we switch from stress to another energy to make business better?
The guy who came up with the stress model, he says there's eustress and distress, right? So there's good stress and bad stress. There is stress which is bad for you. It's toxic. And then there's the stress of growth. You know, that's why I like to work in the area of peak performance, because it's a positive stress. But generally, I want to transform stress, because if it's having a negative effect on you, then you know, it's not going to be useful. It's not going to take you where you want to go. In Brussels, we did a corporate program called the Stress-Free Path to Peak Performance. You know, as like, well, is there such a thing as stress-free? Well, actually, there's such a thing as without the negative stress, without the you know, the toxic stress, without the stress that's bad for you, you know.
We would like to see you in Moscow, maybe working with our businessmen or in corporates. And would you like to come? And what can you say and wish to Russian business, Russian economy?
I'd love to come, actually. I've presented tapping in 15 countries so far, and I find that everywhere I go, there are people, you know, just like everywhere else. And so people all over the world have similar problems and similar hopes and similar dreams, you know. So people in business, generally they're in business because they want security for their family, or they want freedom, or they want abundance, or, you know, whatever it is. These are the kinds of things that people want to get from business. And so for me, I see myself as actually helping people to get what they want. And, you know, within reason, as long as it's a positive life goal, as long as it's a values-based goal. And I see far too many people that are suffering, and particularly in business, where the business is actually, it's taking away more than it's giving. And so I believe that businesses that succeed they give more than they take. And in many, many ways, they give you energy rather than taking energy away. They give you the fuel for your life so you can live whatever life that you want. You know, what's the point of being in business if you don't have a better life, you know? And so, yeah, I would love to help people in business over there to improve their results, to have people perform better, to help people have less stress, to have people, you know, be healthy and at work more often because they're actually, they're in the right place doing the right thing. Yeah, I'd love to do that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Steve, for your time, and hope to see you soon in your online programs, translated into Russian, or in Moscow and doing trainings. Maybe somebody will ask you for coaching, and please contact us, contact Alex or you directly. So thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you, Pavel, and thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to more connection.
Yeah.